So at the latter part of today's gospel, Katie read for us is the comfortable words. It's reminiscent of Rite One, those days gone by. The 8 o'clockers, they were fine with it, but for us, we get it in Lent, we get it a little bit in Advent. It's a part of our nostalgia, and yet there's something requisite about it. Those comfortable words, they're perfect for this summertime event. So I try to be a reader, and I try to engage the summers in different ways. Part of that is an engagement. So oftentimes from this pulpit you'll hear readings and you'll hear quotations from the patristics and the early church fathers, but it's summertime, so you're going to hear quotation from a summer book club reading, if you will. It's a quote that will come from Patrick Conroy. Pat Conroy, he is this prolific writer that comes from the Citadel. So it is not only a nostalgic thing for me, but it's also a requisite thing for me. Not unlike when I was at William and Mary listening to Bruce Hornsby, or here, Chapel Hill, listening to James Taylor, who carried me through many a day. Or, if you happen to be from Wake Forest, maybe listening to Maya Angelou. See, I find Pat Conroy's writings quite significant. In one of his memoirs, particularly My Losing Season, to be a very captivating read. Few authors can hold my attention as he does. The book details his senior year as a point guard at the Citadel, where he learned invaluable lessons from losing. The memoir also delves into the people who broke him down in his journey towards reconciliation, adding a vibrant thread to the story. If you've read any of his earlier works, you know that Conroy's father was a master at demeaning, attacking, and undermining his son. He did it verbally and emotionally. Conroy writes, "There was nothing my father could not teach me about the architecture of despair. I know all its shapes and blueprints, the shadows of all of its columns and archways. My father could send me reeling down its hallways and screaming into its bat-spliced attics with the curl of his thin-lipped mouth. His cruelty baffled me, shamed me, and I promised myself I would never be anything like him." Conroy's life, marked by its persistent and severe ways his father tore him apart, his inane ability to irritate the most severe wounds so that they never healed. He continues, "My father possessed a genius for zeroing in on that tenderest spot of the psyche where healing was most difficult, exposing the rawness of the wound again and again." Conroy and his basketball teammates at the Citadel faced a challenging task from their coach, Mel Thompson. His critical words and negative attitude made them feel discouraged and disheartened. Conroy, in particular, found it difficult to let go of Thompson's hurtful phrases, such as, "You're just average," and "You might as well not try." Despite this, they continued to work hard as a team and to never give up. Though Thompson's constant criticism was a hurdle, they were determined to overcome it and remain hopeful. Every individual who has made a substantial impact on our world has dedicated themselves to diligent work and exerted great effort. Bruce Hornsby, Maya Angelou, Pat Conroy. They have not pursued their goals with self-centered or superficial motivations. They tend to drive us towards a familiar belief that we must measure up, perform, or please, and prove our worthiness to be loved and accepted. However, this mindset can become a heavy burden that Jesus has cautioned us about. Now, Pat Conroy was an extreme example, but I suggest that he's not alone in this account. Everyone listening to Jesus would know precisely what he meant by those comfortable words. For in the book of Moses, there was a massive body of laws and commandments that every good Israelite had to know and had to follow. This could easily become a burden and a source of worry because of their existence, happiness, and well-being depended on how well they followed these demands. Following these laws was considered essential to how one related to God and how one relates to community. However, does anyone feel the weight of following all of these laws today? Most of us are vaguely familiar with what I'll call the top 10, let alone committed to upholding the roughly 600 central commands of the God of Moses. Where we do encounter that kind of devotion. Indeed, a compulsive passion to please is decidedly still found in our culture. But the rules have changed, as have the faces we hope to please. Yet the compulsion is just as strong a burden. We have made it secular instead of the holy that the Israelites aimed to follow. It's not about fearing or disappointing God anymore, but rather about not fitting in with the culture, the crowd, our colleagues, our community. Sadly, we compare them. The rules of culture can be just as overwhelming as the rules of the Torah. We are all familiar with them. Rules about our weight, social circles, power, possessions, community, values, the right schools. The list goes on and on. It's exasperating. And at the end, where and what does it get us? But it doesn't have to be that way. If we're honest with ourselves, people love us and show us simple acts of selflessness and kindness that truly matter. Our family, our dear friends, and those at our workplace or in the checkout line. Maybe somebody's sitting right next to you right now. Time and time again, simple acts or words of kindness often help ease our burden, if but for a moment. But they stay with us, these acts of kindness, and they truly become memorable. We might call them our balcony people, the ones who are there ready to lift us up when we need it the most, sometimes without even knowing the impact that they have. Sometimes people can shift our perspective and lighten our load with their optimism. Just last week, I spoke with a parishioner before he left the hospital. Even though the weeks of recovery from surgery awaited him, his words found their way back to express the joys of life, his wife, his children. He reflected on a blessed life, as he called it. It's an honor to know him. For you see, when I entered into that conversation, I thought maybe I was there to assist him somehow. But it was he who put my mind at ease and gave me the perspective that I needed at that moment. We essentially shared each other's burden. You who are so weary and heavy laden beneath the yoke of all the demands of your labor to satisfy, says Jesus, come to me, and I will give you rest. So we do hear these comfortable words time and again in the Rite One service. But can we readily grasp it? Can we live into it? It's an invitation to experience rest and a sense of calm and a unique love that accepts us as we are, regardless of how the day's been, other people's opinions of us, or our successes or our failures. It involves recognizing that we don't need to prove ourselves to anybody, and that we might have the right to be who and where we are, invited to embrace our strengths and weaknesses, our successes and our failures. Jesus invites us to take his yoke upon us and learn from him, offering us the ultimate rest, a release from the constant battle to prove our worth, and a realization that we are nothing less the beloved children of God. To know to the depth of our soul that you are already a special somebody. I hope that's why you're here. Pat Conroy finally found the rest in an English professor who befriended him and who encouraged him as a writer. And as his mentor, the professor told him, "You're too hard on yourself. You are deeply unhappy for reasons I don't understand, which pains me. I think you could be special if you only thought that was something special about yourself was possible. Someone has taught you to hate yourself." I hope I haven't crossed some line, Mr. Conroy. I value our friendship so much. Conroy received words of support that helped him rebuild his life, to recognize his value and to turn his trauma into successful memoirs and novels that made it onto the New York Times bestseller list and even adapted into 2 Oscar-nominated films. As Christians, we are responsible for speaking truthfully to one another, offering encouragement and assisting each other in our journeys. We should seek out friends who embody goodness and reflect God's grace, helping us to put the pieces of our lives back together in the right way. For it's in that place, that space, that we find our burdens lightened and the needed rest for our souls. How could Jesus make it any more simpler than that? As we think about the people who have been our supportive friends and mentors during tough times, or even those who have shown us random acts of kindness, we should ask ourselves, to whom are we meant to be holy friends? Let's not limit our reflections to those who have helped us. Let's stretch ourselves and consider how we can positively influence other lives around us. With whom are we willing to shoulder the burdens and give a moment's rest? Who needs us to give them back the pieces of their lives in the right order? This is the light yoke, the easy burden Jesus offers to us and calls us to share. How can we dare not to take up this mantle? What a gift. What an incredible image we could be to this community around us, to the people of Durham. An image of sharing through Jesus with each other, taking on a burden shared. A burden shared with all the balcony people of our lives, daring to become the same for others and ultimately sharing with the one who is gentle and humble of heart and desires to give us rest. No matter where we are in life or what challenges we face, whether stumbling or sad or glory or greatness or gladness, we are never alone. We are supported, we are propped up, helped along, and loved to the end. And my friends, we are called to do the same for others.